Welcome to Chewing the Crust with me, the Pie Eating Man. Today's guest is a superb human called Clare Greaves. Clare is a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, and also just an inspiration to me on so many levels. I think you're going to love the chat that we have. Just to explain a little bit more about this podcast, I want to help people to see that even when they're at their lowest and things have hit them when they least expect it, my guests and the chats that we have can help them to see that there's a way forward and that it's possible and worthwhile, no matter how hard it feels, to go on and make a success of things. Clare is an absolute shining example of this. I hope you enjoy the program this week. So if you do, please click like, and if you would subscribe to the YouTube channel, that's really great and it helps the channel too. Welcome to Chewing the Crust with the Pie Eating Man. We've got a guest with a master plan. From Hull she rose through trials tough, a childhood storm, a road so rough. Yet even then, with heart so wide, she dreamed of standing by others' side. At 17, she found her way, a new home, a brighter day. She helped a friend, she found her call to lift up those who feared the fall. Through battles dark, she made it through. With hope, with love, she always knew. Now each week with steps so true, she walks with those who need it too. A light, a guide, a heart so kind, restoring faith in humankind. So grab a slice and settle in with Clare, the change and chats begin. So welcome Clare Greaves to my podcast.
Thank you. That was really lovely. Got a quivery lip now.
Now, one of the things I forgot to ask Andrew last week, and I have messaged him so we can try and edit it and put it in. And it's probably the most important question of all the things that we do on the show is, what would be your perfect choice of pie filling?
Oh, minced beef and onion all day.
No question.
No, don't like any other pies, just minced beef and onion.
There you go. Oh, well, I like that. There was no thought about that at all.
No.
You and I know each other both professionally and I think on a, I'd like to say on a friendship level. I care a great deal about you. We met on a course, actually, a leadership course, where we both found bits of it challenging and perhaps supported each other through, and we've remained friends ever since. And every year you surprise me with something new. You surprise me with another level of kindness. I'm very proud to have you on this podcast, but also to be able to call you a friend at the same time, because I think you are really inspirational.
And I think the same about you, Mark. And what I will say is, going back to that leadership course, I was really, really scared to go into higher education because it's not something I ever had the opportunity to do. And I think on that very first day, you recognised that I was struggling and that I was feeling out my depth. And I turned to you for advice that day on whether I should stay or not. And you supported me. And then I got home and you sent me a long email about the fact that you've struggled with your mental health, that you've had difficult times, and if you can get through it, then I can. And passing that course with the support of people like you was one of the biggest achievements ever, because I don't have a lot of self-confidence, and you all helped me through that, so thank you.
Oh, well, nice thing to say. I'm glad that was the case, but I don't think I knew it was the case. So that's nice. It's nice. I just think, and you do this all the time, I think by being nice to people, sometimes you don't realize that that has a positive impact, but it's always going to have a positive impact rather than being unpleasant to people, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And me seeing you in an environment like that, you're confident, you're knowledgeable. So straight off the back, I'm kind of a little bit insecure about the people who surrounded me. But then when you opened up, I felt less alone. And I thought, actually, we shouldn't judge people by what they look like. Everybody's got a journey and everybody struggles with certain things. And that's how you made me feel that day.
So that's nice. I've written a bit about it in my book. I'm a big bloke, and I do come across as confident, but certainly in my childhood and growing up, that overconfidence, I think, is compensatory for actually not being desperately confident. I think it's almost like an attack before you're attacked. It's unconscious, but it's the same as I always introduce myself as the big fat ginger guy. I'm not desperately happy about being overweight. I'm not really bothered about having a ginger beard, but I have been picked on about it. And I think if you bring it to the forefront straight away, it gives everybody nothing to fire at you.
Yeah, and I used to do similar, and I did it for a long time. Every time I was talking to somebody, I would say straight off the bat, I used to be homeless. Whereas now that doesn't define me anymore. Everything since then does. So I don't say that anymore.
People who've watched the first couple of episodes will know that before I conduct these interviews with people, I'd send out a questionnaire. And even though I know Claire, it's very important to me that when we do these interviews, one, that I understand a little bit about the person, perhaps more than I thought I did, but also to make sure that I don't tread in places that is difficult for people. So obviously you've given me loads of information with regard to your past and history. How do you want to talk about it? Would you like me to ask you questions about it, or do you just want to tell me your story?
I don't mind. You might have to, if you ask me questions, you'll stop me going off on a tangent. So you'll keep me focused.
Tangents are good. I ended up talking about my clubbing with Sean Ryder in the first episode, which you'll hopefully soon see. But that
Well, we have something in common because my cousin is actually MC Tunes, who was in 808 State and is friends with Bez and Shaun Ryder. So that's, yeah.
wow, have you met them?
Yeah, I didn't know he existed for a very long time, Mark. And my mum was one of 5 siblings, and Nicky, my cousin MC Tunes, he left very young with his dad. So I didn't know Nicky was there until about 15 years ago when we started to try and find members of our family. And it turns out he's part of the Hacienda classical scene, and he gets on stage and he does
Wow,
all the music with Bez. And he wrote the loop to Fatboy Slim's Gangster Tripping. So yeah.
that's amazing.
I know. Yeah, so I do have quite a colourful family, but if you want me to kind of start, I grew up in East Hull. I was born in 1975, so I am 50 this year.
Which I can I just say, when you told me that earlier this year, despite having known you for a while, I could not believe that. I thought you were younger than me.
I'm 50 in September, and MC Tunes is coming to DJ at my party.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know. So yeah, my childhood wasn't ideal. It was difficult. My mum struggled with her mental health. Dad had an alcohol problem. I went to many schools in Hull and really did struggle to settle. But I always knew that I wanted to make a difference or break a cycle. That makes sense. Things did get challenging at home, and I was left. I was homeless at 17. I managed to get a place in the wonderful Hull Resettlement Project. And everybody used to say, "Oh, we feel really sorry for you. I'm sorry you're in there." It changed my life. It was the best thing to ever happen to me. I was given structure, I was given friendship, I was given just the best support ever. And I'd gone from this really volatile home environment to my own little flat with my own reason to get up and get out. I used to help the others in there. We had a social worker. And yeah, I think I was just taught to live independently and be responsible for myself.
Isn't it interesting that I think you've hit the nail on the head on really in how you've described that, because I think how we define the scenario we find ourselves in is everything. And your what's the word? Your stubbornness, I don't know, your will, that's the word. Your will to not be defined by the negative traits that your family had described themselves finding themselves in, and I'm sure I don't think the only one for that, and I'm sure it's not a slight on them either, because I think that's a societal thing. But I think sometimes that need to change your future, to break that cycle, I think is inspirational. And I don't know if you do, but I think you probably know. I listen to Chris Evans' breakfast show a lot in the morning, um, and he describes people as being disruptors, and certain, not in a bad way. People that oftentimes, um, people who question things that other people don't question, or look at the world from a slightly different angle in order to improve things for everybody. He calls them disruptors, and I'm sure that's recognized in some book somewhere. But I think that's what you've done there. As part of your family, you've been a disruptor to 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 change the course of your life. And it's funny because when I was growing up, I grew up in a single parent family. Um, although I did see my dad once a month, I didn't see a lot of him, and my mum was the primary sort of caregiver. That stigma that it's certainly in the 80s that went alongside being brought up in a single parent family. I was the only one in my, oh, there's two people in my class that didn't have one of their parents around. I think it's much more common nowadays, but they used to call you know, like a broken family, they used to call it.
Yeah, yeah,
And that term, I wasn't from a broken family. I'm sure there were broken families out there. I was from a single parent family. I got good food. My mum, you know, didn't drink excessively. She worked hard. She had two boys, and she gave us the values and perhaps maybe not what you had in that essence, but she gave us the values and the reason to say, if you don't ask, you don't get, and if you know if you don't seek to change, nothing will change. You know,
yeah.
and it sounds like you were intelligent enough to perhaps recognize some of that for yourself, and that's really impressive.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, I don't know where it came from, Mark. It was just I was driven to make a difference. I think even though my relationship with my mum wasn't great, but she did drill into us the basic work hard, be polite. Do you know what I mean? Eat well, and so she did. We did get those skills from her, and I have to. Although there wasn't a lot of love, there was those practical skills. So,
Yeah.
and I think I just wanted different. I just used to listen to everybody being angry at everybody, and it was always somebody else's fault. And I thought, right, when I was given I see being in that homeless hostel as an opportunity. I didn't feel sad. I was like, right, I'm here. I'm going to get a job, which I did. I got myself a little secretarial job, and I was the only one out, I think, of the six of us that was in there at that time that went to work every day, came back, paid my £11 rent, did all my jobs, found my love of music, which then would mean I'd work harder because I'd want to go listen to music on a weekend. And then it just went from there, really. I'm not by any stretch saying it was perfect. I did go down dark routes. I did. I went down drug use route. I was heavily drinking, but something always brought me back. I knew what path I wanted to go on. And I think that the times I got myself into those kind of situations is because I wanted to be part of something. So
Mm,
whatever friendship group I was in, I would blend in with them. So if that was partying, I would do
mm.
that. If that was drinking, I would do that. So, but then I started with charity work. And I thought, oh no, no, this is my thing.
I think to swear as well to offer you some credit as well. You know, certainly in the 90s when I was growing up, drugs was part of a social scene, and I'm sure that there were some elements of of social scenes that were more druggy than other elements, and I never really took part in that a great deal. You know. And I was never, my friends and I hung around with a lot of sports people, even though I'm obviously not sporty. Um, I used to, all my mates were footballers. So weirdly, and even now, I'm still friends with like the lads I was friends with at 4 or 5 years old. Um, none of us smoke. None of us have smoked, and that's really unusual. I think. But I think, you know, again, it's a bit of luck of the draw. By blending in, it was actually good for me. But I've got to ask you, even though perhaps this isn't very wider podcast friendly, what was your club of choice in Hull then?
Well, I used to go to Room. And then but I wasn't really a whole clubber. I would go off. I met some wonderful friends in the homeless hostel. When I was in the homeless hostel, and they would get in a transit van every Friday, and off we'd go to Sheffield to Love to Be, or we would go to Leicester to see Graham Park at the fan club. And then yeah, I went to Hacienda on New Year's Eve, which was
Wow.
amazing. So I wouldn't change those days, Mark. That passion for music and that drive to want to go to these places kept me going to work. It made me want to get new clothes and work harder so I could enjoy those like experiences. And I still have a passion for music now. It was very important to me at the time.
Yeah, I think as much as I absolutely love music, for me, it was about the friends that I had as much as the
Yeah,
music. I
yeah,
mean, music is just the heartbeat for everything for me. You know, it is, and it's what you associate with, isn't it? And you talked about going into the homeless hostel as um, something that other people might look at as a negative thing, but it was absolutely amazing for you.
Yeah,
It,
opportunity. And I had the kindest social worker. I met some amazing friends. I think I said to you in my question, my passion for fundraising came from the fact that I met a young chap in there. We made friends, and he was super talented at artwork, but he wasn't able to write very well. So I said, right then, I've heard of the Princess Trust. Let's sit down. What do you need? Because I've always been bossy, and let's see what we can get for you. And he's like, what do you mean? So I said, no, there's charities out there who'll help. So I remember writing this letter. We asked for some paints and some pens and some paper and some spray cans, and sent this off to the prince. And we got them. He got them, and that enabled him to do a mural in a youth centre in Hull. And I was like, right, if I can help this person, I want to help another person. And that's where it all started in terms of my community work. And it made me realise we were 5, 6 young people in a homeless hostel who really didn't have anybody to support us, but there is people and community groups and charities out there that will.
mm. And you don't all have to have the same beliefs and feelings and enjoy the same things to still have a structure and support to each other. I mean, it's
No.
almost sometimes better when I think you have different interests.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've got a little raver clicking around in her gold high heels every Friday and Saturday, writing a letter to the Princess Trust for a young graffiti artist who's dressed in his Run DMC t-shirt with his hair all in cornrows, and we were best friends.
And I think those unlikely friendships are the ones that you hold dear all of your life as well, aren't they?
I think they're life-saving, in all honesty. I
Yeah.
think those friendships, even if they don't last, I think you are meant to meet people along the way who will change the direction of your life.
Mm. It's also interesting as well, going back to that, because probably the best thing that's ever happened to me was my breakdown at sort of my mental breakdown at like 21 to 23, 25 maybe. And the recovery and learning from that and learning at such a young age, as have you, what's important in life. And I think that's perhaps it's not the same story, but it's the same outcome that at such a young age you learn people are the most important thing, happiness and kindness is the most important thing, and actually money helps, but it's not the most important thing. And I think a lot of people do make that error.
Yeah,
I always say money doesn't automatically bring happiness. The only thing money brings for me is choices,
yeah,
and I think as you grow up, choices are pleasant and they're a luxury, but I think you can get by without them as long as you've just got to work harder to change direction, haven't you?
yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing, about music, talking about music, is that those dark days for me, there's music I can't listen to because it hurts or because
Yeah.
it makes me feel sick.
But you know what? Some days I listen to that on purpose. I will listen to those songs if I'm struggling to express myself and I'm sad and I'm trying to people please to cover up what's going on inside. I will put on those songs that bring out that emotion just so it comes out. It's a coping mechanism I use.
That's interesting, and perhaps it's inspirational for you because you obviously changed the tide at that point as well, didn't you? So,
But it's been a massive part of my life, whether that be concerts, whether it be house music, any music. I just love it. And reading, that's my other favourite thing. But it did get a little bit darker for me. So after I'd got in the homeless hostel, I'd been there a few months and I was offered, you get enough points when you're on the register to be able to get a property. And they said, right, it's your turn for your flat, Claire. It's this little flat on Brandon and it's time for you to kind of fly the nest. And I'm like, right, okay, I don't know how I feel about this. So off I went to work, walk past the job centre. Outside the job centre was loads of balloons and a big banner saying, come and work at Butlins. I thought, right, I've got two opportunities here. I either go to the flat on my own and be very lonely and scared, or I go work at Butlins. So I walked in, did the interview, off I went. So I don't even know. I don't know what made me do it. I was so shy. I was really quite small in stature and really quite scared of the world. And then off I went down to Minehead for the summer. Had the best summer down there. and then decided I was going to move up a bit closer because my sister was also without a family. So she was very much in and out of our family home with mum, but sleeping at a friend's as well. And I'm like, right, okay, she's very vulnerable. I need to be near her because she's 4 years younger than me. So I was only 18 at this point. So I managed to get a job at Skegness, Butlins. I might have bent the rules a little bit with because I got my sister a job there, even though she was underage, but we kind of just pretended she was 18 because in my head she was safer with me. And that was it, really. I met Mark there, my husband. That was 30 years ago.
Wow.
Emma came and lived with us in Skegness. I'm still with Mark now, so we've been married to 23 years, I think it is. So
Can I just say that I sent you a questionnaire asking you about all this, and you didn't mention Butlins at all.
no, no, it was party central. But
But
it was the best time with the best people. And do you know what, Mark? It was hard work. It really, really was. But you had a group of people who were clearly had not a great home life. They were either running away from something or someone, and they came together just for the summer, and it was just brilliant. It was the best time ever.
it sounds a bit like Butlins was your equivalent to going to university. You know, that was the
Yeah.
similar thing. You know,
It's where I learned to work. It's where I learned all to live independently, manage a family, look after my sister. Yeah, just it was because I didn't have the opportunity to go to university, which is something I do. When I look back, I wish that is one thing I wish I'd had, but I wouldn't change my life path at all.
but isn't it wonderful as well when you look back at yourself in those days and you can actually see yourself as a young person that you can look at them and think you're proud of the person you were because you think, you know, you went and did it. Yeah, you did some silly things, and yes, you've done some things you regret, but that's one of the reasons you went there to do things you regret.
Also, I would say all the mistakes I've made, Mark, have made me the person I am today and make me be able to relate to those who are struggling. So it's not blaming yourself for those mistakes, is it? I was never a bad person. I didn't do anything with intention to be a bad person. I just made wrong choices at the time. But those choices have led me to where I am now.
Are you comfortable then going on to talk about eating disorders? Because I think that's a really important thing to talk
Yeah.
about. And I think it's something that even nowadays isn't spoken about enough and made normal and made less shameful and all of those kind of things. So
Yeah, I am absolutely. As a child, there was a lot of comments made about my weight and who I reminded people of, and that came back, I would say, probably when I was about 18 years old. I started to be aware of what I looked like physically. Then I started to, well, I had bulimia. So I had bulimia for a long time because it was a
when
way,
was this, Claire? When did
it
this?
started probably when I was about 18.
Right.
So and I'm in recovery now, but I can't say those thoughts have gone away. It takes a lot of management for me to not get on the scales, do an extreme diet. This whole Ozempic thing that's happening now. In my head, I'm like, right, you need to join in with this because this is going to make all your problems okay. It's going to make everything fine. But
Yeah.
this side of me has done too much work to even go down that road. But yeah, it just started, Mark. I think when life got a bit out of control, or if I couldn't manage, or if there was any contact from my family, just times when things got hard, I would either not eat or I would overeat and I would throw up. It was just an awful habit, and I was very, very thin. And when I came back from Butlins, Mark and I got a little council house on East Hull. And I was trying to get a job with the council. Mark was struggling to find work. And in that time, it got even worse because obviously my mum's back in the scene. Um, I couldn't get work. We're living in this council house. We had little money. And that was when my eating disorder ramped up to a whole new level. It was like, right, if I can't control all of this stuff that's going on around me, what I can do is control my food. So I did get very thin and very ill, lost a lot of hair. And it's been something I've carried around forever. I'm still now trying to find a balance at 50 years old, because obviously I'm going through the menopause. I've had to have some medication for that. I take medication for my mental health, but all of that comes with weight fluctuations, and
Mm.
it's just something I'm going to live with, I think, forever. And it just makes me so sad, Mark, that you look at these young women now and they're surrounded by these perfect images on Instagram and this Ozempic phase, and I think it's just such a waste of life. It is just, I don't think there's a day gone by in 50 years, 40 years where the numbers on the scales have not determined my mood for the day.
So do you have to weigh yourself?
I haven't been weighed now. I threw my scales away in October last year. And I'm not spending any more time thinking about it, thinking about what I look
Good.
like. I've got one life and I've spent a lot of it in pain, and I'm not doing it anymore. I've got a little
Mm.
girl who's 13 looking up to me and how I behave and how I manage myself. And if I'm going to, like I said to you back at the beginning, I want to change generations of this behavior. And so if I want to do that, that includes my relationship with food as well.
As part of that journey, do you think the commercial body image that is out there has affected that, or do you think it's you and your understanding of how you appear? Is it like body dysmorphia? Do you think
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I've never been comfortable in my own skin, but I think as somebody who's not really had a lot of love and support, that it's hard to love yourself, if that makes
yeah.
sense. But then with that, and this need to control everything that's going on in my life, and control food, control money, all of that. But then on alongside the 90s, very much punishing people for weighing 8 stone, putting circles around people's midriffs on magazines. It was intense back then. And recently I've come to understand that it isn't about scale weight. So about 4 years ago, signed up for a body transformation plan, lost nearly 2 stone, one, still sad. So now put the weight back on, living a lot healthier lifestyle, a bit more balance to it, with a new coach who's guiding me down that route. And I feel a million times better. So that just shows it's not about the numbers on the scale, it's about what's inside. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's what's up in your head, isn't it? And but I know when I had a friend at uni, we used to she was bulimic, um, and we used to make her sing when she went to the bathroom so that she couldn't be sick.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped her, but it helped us as well because it felt like we could actually do something.
There's been times, Mark, where I've done it out loud because I was so desperate for help. I was just hoping Mark would hear me or my mum would hear me, but nobody ever had the confidence to come up. And so that hurt as well, because no, they
Mm.
don't know what to do. Mark definitely doesn't know what to do. But I've, since Poppy's been born, even though she's 13 now, I'm doing well. I've changed my habits for her because I want to be a good mum and I want to hand over a healthy baton, not a damaged one.
You're setting an example to her, and the example is that's another thing off her list that she doesn't have to worry
Yeah,
about.
there's never been a conversation about weight in this house ever. There's
Yeah,
never been a conversation about food. Even when Mark decided he was going to take himself back to Slimming World, we called it Healthy Club. We didn't say
yeah,
those words.
yeah. I think that's really good, and because I think the stigma works both ways. I do. It's a very, very delicate subject that I think every single person has a different feeling, and I think to like you've said, commenting on anything can really be detrimental. So
Yeah.
I think you've done amazing there.
Yeah, like you, I think for me, where my life really changed, obviously, it was, I think, if Poppy's 14 this year, it'd have been about 16 years ago, and I had a mental health crisis. Everything went really dark. I really didn't feel well. I wasn't sure whether I could get through it. Went to the doctors and I found a wonderful GP who, for the first time in my life, just understood and listened. He referred me on to psychotherapy. I met a wonderful doctor through the Humber NHS Trust, and that's when the real work started. And unpacking years and years and years of trauma. Well, I think people just thought I was the mad one, but it wasn't. It was just that I was struggling. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to show them that I'm not the mad one and I can do this. And I absolutely went through years of therapy, which was the hardest thing, but the best thing I've ever done in my life. And I honestly don't know where I'd be without my wonderful doctor. I was worried I couldn't have children. So, because of my eating disorders and because of my fear of the abused becoming the abuser, which is often what happens, I
Yeah.
used to think, what if I get a child and then I don't love them, or will I hurt them? And all of this stuff going on. So, people used to say to me and Mark, oh, you've been together forever. When are you having a baby? So, my stock reply would be, I had an eating disorder. I don't think I can have children. Nobody had told me that. No, I'd had no tests. This was just my defense mechanism because I didn't want to say, don't want to have a baby in case I hurt it. But
But it's
then
pressure. It's similar to the eating disorder. It's someone inquiring about your.
body, your thought. What happened was after about 2 or 3 years of therapy, I did get pregnant unexpectedly, which was a ball out of the blue. And sadly, I miscarried, but that opened the floodgates. So then the feelings came in. Maybe I do want to be a mum. Maybe I will be a good mum. And then in 2011, I had Poppy. And from that day, I just vowed I would do everything I could to not just be a good mum, but be a good person and encourage her to support her community, her friends, and just being a mum's the best thing I've ever done, ever.
Mm. And I don't think kids understand how much you love them until they become a parent either.
You know,
It's interesting. I went to a course recently. I don't know if you saw it because we work at the same place, but there was a course on childlessness, and it was really hard. And it taught me a lot. It's something I've never really thought about. Um, and you've touched on it there, really, that asking people without children if they're going to have children certainly is it's harrowing. You
yeah.
know, the damage that can do, or the upset that can cause, or the reasons behind it.
Yeah, and it would just trigger my eating disorder again because
Yeah.
then I'd think, oh gosh, why are people asking me these questions? And it would just, I'd feel out of control, bang, back with the eating problems. But yeah, so it's been a challenge because I don't have very much context to parenting. I'm having to learn as I go along. And I'm very lucky that I have got some amazing friends for guidance and advice. But yeah, I'm doing okay, I think.
I think you're doing marvelous. I see the pictures. I think Poppy's a superstar.
Yes, with an attitude, but I'm getting used to that. But that's a learning curve, Mark. When she's coming into this teenage hormonal part of her life, it's hard not to take offence. And that is something I'm having to learn at the minute, is not to put my pressures and my insecurities onto her. This is
Mm.
normal behaviour. This is not my child not loving me. Yeah, and I think from that I had Poppy, and then 7 years ago, I thought, right, I've had all of my therapy. I've had all my medication and whatever else. How am I going to manage my mental health going forward? Because I'm always going to need support. I'm always going to need somebody to talk to. And that is when I read a book by Bryony Gordon, who's a journalist down in London. She's a mental health advocate and she put a post on social media, I think back in 2006, saying, if anybody's out there struggling, I'll be stood in Hyde Park Corner at whatever time. Come and meet me and go for a walk. So I'm sat at work with Jonathan and Natalie, and I said, I'm going to do that. And there was like, oh, Claire, no, not another one of you random ideas. And I said, no, I am. I'm signing up now. So I signed up that day to be a walk leader. And 6 years down the line, I've got the most wonderful community group. It's a peer support mental health walking group. And yeah, I've never looked back.
It
Yeah.
takes a lot of work, and but I think you've been quite pivotal because you've been involved from such an early time. I think you've also been involved in helping lots of other mental health mates walks set up. Is that fair?
Oh yeah, and I helped with Bridlington and Goole, yeah, and Hornsey. I helped raise funding so that we could get them all some flyers and get them hoodies. I've been down to meet the walk leaders from Thurrock and Hyams Park. It's been the best thing ever, but I don't just really, we do other things as well, don't we? So what I encourage my group to do is get involved in volunteering. So things like Beverley Pride last year, up and coming, fantastic for the local community, but still need support. So off we all go in our high vis and volunteer. We did the same at BevFest. They'll all help me at the Christmas campaign because I've been running the Christmas campaign with food hampers for 20 years.
Well, just part of that, we'll come back to that. There's a couple of things that you're actually brushing over. I see you do, obviously, you do the weekly walks, but then very often it's a midweek, an evening, or a weekend evening where you've gone along to, as you say, another event, a Christmas event, or a carol singing event, or might even be it could be World Mental Health Day, or because
Yeah.
you do more, don't you?
Yeah, we do. So at the very beginning, I would do one walk a month because as I found it really difficult. I'm chatting about this like it's the easiest thing in the world, when actually those first few walks, my anxiety was through the roof. I wasn't comfortable walking down to the foresters to meet strangers. But my
So
best
just
friend,
just back up, because for those who don't know, what does this involve? People might not actually understand exactly what happens for a mental health walk.
yes, Mental Health Mates is a peer support walking group where you can go along and walk and talk without fear of judgment. They are a safe space for people that are struggling with their mental health. They might be struggling with grief. They might be just new to the area. We all have mental health, good or bad. You don't have to have depression to turn up. This is just a way of getting out in nature, meeting like-minded people, having a stroll, making connections. If you go onto Mental Health Mate's website, there is a postcode finder, and you can pop your postcode in and see if there is one local to you. And if there isn't, you can set one up if you want to. So I decided I was going to do this and be the walk leader for Beverley. So my very first walk was the 23rd of March 2019. Yeah. So I was really super anxious because you don't know whether anybody's going to come. You don't know what you're going to say. But my best friends, Jonathan and Natalie, came with me and we stood and waited, and 12 people came. Said they'd seen it on Twitter and Facebook, and I was like, right, okay. So it went really, really well. And we'd carry on once a month. But then lockdown happened. And I was like, okay, this is challenging because obviously I've just got everybody comfortable and confident. And how do I navigate this now? So some days I would walk around the streets and just wave through the window of the members, because I knew they were alone or isolated. I tried a Teams call because that's what was suggested, but I don't find this kind of call easy. Um, so then I just started doing a quiz. So I thought, right, this is because that way there's no awkward conversation. There's no, right, you speak next, or there's no trying to facilitate all of that online. So we'd just have a fortnightly quiz just so we could keep those connections in place until after lockdown. And then obviously when we could meet as groups of six, I would meet with one group of six, then the next group of six, and off we would go around the back with my letter saying I was allowed because I was a community group supporting mental health. And then from there, we've just grown and grown. With the help from the Smile Foundation in Hull, I registered as a constituted community group, which means that we have a little trustee board and I can get small pots of funding. So we have a wonderful community support network with our supermarkets. I mean, Morrison's, One Stop, Tesco's, they will do what they can to help. They'll give us tea and coffees, which I serve from my car boot. They'll give the kids sweets and crisps. And then when I do a cinema event, which I do every Christmas, they'll give a goodie bag to all the children. So it's this year, in 2 weeks' time, we're doing a walk with the animal therapy group Fairy Friends, and at that event we are going to appoint 3 youth ambassadors. So one thing I'm passionate about is the young people getting involved in community, because we don't see enough of it, and I think it brings a lot of confidence to young people. I think it's important that other young people see young people working in the community talking about mental health. So our new little ambassadors are 5, 10 and 14. And so they're going to talk about it in school. They're going to lead a walk. So I'm proud of that.
I bet that's amazing, and I think it shows at a young age. Mixing with people of different ages is important as well. What you gain from that, and we've all got something to learn from each other. Older people will learn from young people. Young people will learn from older people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found when I've been invited into Longcroft School for the last 3 years for Children's Mental Health Week. And that's been fantastic. We've got a couple of group members now who I met at Longcroft. They wanted to come and walk and talk, and then they've gone from there to kind of go on to write poetry, get poetry published. Well, I've got some wonderful young people, and they are the next me and you, Mark. They are going to be
Yeah.
those people talking about mental health. I had another lady on my group who sadly took her own life about 2 years ago, and her family left some money at for my group at the funeral. And with
Wow.
that, we sponsored a girls' football team so that the girls proudly wear the logo of Mental Health Mates. They represent the group. And I'm hoping that encourages other young women in sport to talk about
Yeah.
mental health. In the years since doing mental health, mates, I'll be honest with you, even though I've worked at the council for 23 years and I've done a lot of community work over that time, I did not know that there was so much support available. And so I've done lots and lots of reading and research and visiting people. And what I do now, I bring community groups to us. So a lot of people on my walk will say, can you do a Monday night? Can you do a Wednesday night? And I have to explain that my limit is really a Sunday. However, there's
Yeah.
Andy's Man's Club on a Monday night, or there is a wonderful charity in Market Wheaton called Talking About Loss, which is a grief group. But people might listen to me and they'll say, oh, yeah, I'll go. But then they don't have the confidence to go. So what
Yeah.
I do is I bring the groups to the walk. And that way it opens up that conversation. And then from that, you will more often than not, people have gone to the group they wanted to on a Monday or a Wednesday.
And that's an absolutely brilliant idea because signposting is one thing, but as you say, having worked in a charity myself where I've been a volunteer and all of the volunteers had mental health issues, the inherent problem with that, and it's the same with your group, is everybody has mental health problems. That can manifest itself in a lack of confidence or, the reason that they're there in the first place is really it's really brave of them to be there and also they're overcoming those massive obstacles to gain that community. So to push the boat out and go somewhere else new and try something else new.
It's overwhelming. Yeah. So I'm just looking now. We've worked with Beverley Rugby Club. We've worked with the Food Bank. We're talking about loss. The Wombos. So that's another one. Litter picking, looking after your area, keeping your community tidy, because litter picking is quite. You can do it by yourself. You don't have to do it with other people. But some people don't have the courage to meet the organisers, get the equipment they need. So I did a joint litter pick. And now a couple of my group, one being an 83-year-old lady, off she goes now. She don't come to the walk. She just goes off litter picking and she sends me a picture and I upload it onto the Wombles page. And so it's just showing people what's out there without them having to find it themselves.
I think part of the problem is you don't walk down your street very often anymore and wave at Mrs. Jones and Bob who lives on the corner. You get in your car and you go to work. You get in your car and you go to shop. You know, very few people actually bump into each other. And you might know your neighbours directly, left and right. And if you're lucky, more than that. But people don't tend to look in on people who are unwell or they don't know very well and what you're doing is creating that again and you truly do inspire me and you wear it so lightly. If my book or if this podcast changes one person's life for the better, that's a success. You're changing dozens of people's lives every week for the better.
But they're also, what I will say is they're helping each other, because we over the last few years, I've got a core group of people who come a lot, and they know now what's expected of them without being asked. They look for the new person. They reassure the person who's upset. Like recently, we've had a man come along who lost his wife, and then a young girl come along who'd lost her dad. And what's happened is the husband and his daughter have made friends with the other young girl, and they've been going to support groups together. because it is not just me. I just turn up and I'm the kind of the face of the walk, but everybody else works just as hard in making sure everybody's supported. We've had some terrible times over the last few years. We lost our smallest member, who was 2, to cancer, and his mum was left with nothing, but we all come together to help her, to fix her house up, to get her food, to make sure her bills were paid. We lost a lady to suicide, and again, everybody at the funeral, we've planted a memorial tree in the Millennium Orchard. um we're bringing back that let's look after each other, and that's what I said to you is what I'm passionate about. Because when I was younger, I remember people down the street would give me a drink if it was hot, or they'd let you play in the garden, or they'd check on my mum. Where has that gone? And services are so stretched, there isn't enough carers, there isn't enough money, so let's just all start looking after each other because we need to.
I think without you, it would be very difficult. You're a very special person. You've done a lot of special things, a lot of people. So I think you should be proud of yourself. I've never had therapy. And everybody who I know who's had therapy says it's amazing. To someone like me who's considering therapy, what would you say to them?
So for one, it was getting through the door, trusting somebody. I was very loyal, Mark, and I didn't talk about my family at all. And I would never have told anybody outside what was happening behind those doors. It wasn't what we did. And when I started to talk about it, I felt a sense of disloyalty. Even though it was in a safe space, it was hard for me to tell somebody how I actually felt, because I don't like to be unkind. I was scared of the feelings coming out, if I'm honest. And I would leave after session 1, session 2. I wouldn't really say everything I wanted or needed to say, but then I built up a real trust in my doctor. I was just determined to get well. And it's just talking therapy. That's all I had, talking it through, letting go of my anger, letting go of my pain, being okay with sitting with anger. I can't explain it really, because I suppose it's personal to each person, but it did change my life. It has changed my life.
Do you think it allows you to exercise those muscles of talking about it so that
Yeah.
when you do, when you can talk about it, it feels a bit more comfortable? And that, I always say exercise those muscles. Like when you do an exercise that you're not used to, it hurts for a couple of days, but actually it gets easier.
Yeah, and I think I used to have a lot of recurring thoughts and flashbacks, and talking them over and over again and talking through them and sitting with that anger. And I never felt like I had a right to be angry. But what he taught me is that our feelings shouldn't be invalidated. We can be mad, we can be angry, we can be disappointed in how we've been treated. It's fine. But I didn't used to feel like that. I used to think if I was mad, I was being disloyal. I don't suppose I'm making any sense, so please don't put this on your podcast.
You're absolutely making sense, and I think it's vital that it goes on personally. But
So I'm okay to feel now. If feel let down by somebody, they let me down. If I'm angry at somebody, be angry at them. It's a normal response. No response is not normal. Everything was just trapped in here, Mark. Everything. Years and years of frustration, heartache, love, unanswered questions.
an example I think about, and I wonder if it's similar, is a road rage thing. So you're driving along, someone pulls out in front of you, and you bib your horn, and you get ever so cross, and they shout something at you, and you shout something at them, and for the rest of the day, that can leave you feeling cross, and perhaps that other person just went off and never thought about it again. And do you think it helps you to leave the road rage incident where it was,
Yeah.
and actually it doesn't spoil the rest of your day?
And that's what I learned to do. So the first few sessions, I would say I left still angry, sad, tearful, headache. But then as I went on and as I talk about it more, and as I allowed myself to be angry at what happened in the past, but move on, let it go. It got lighter and lighter and lighter. And I think that helped. So when obviously in my younger days, if things were difficult, I would be sick, or I would purge, or I would drink, or I would take drugs. So this life now, I let those frustrations out, or I feel them. So it means I don't turn to those destructive habits anymore, because I'm letting the feelings out instead of letting them all build up until I go, right, I'm going out and I'm going to drink.
Because I also believe that certainly in my journey, but I think it's in lots of people's mental health journey. I think forgiveness plays a massive part, and almost what you're touching on from me is what I think about as forgiveness. So forgiving myself, not necessarily to take it away what happened if I made a mistake, but forgive myself for making the mistake so that it doesn't take over the next 10 years or 5 years or next
Yeah,
6 months or next hour.
it's also helped me forgive my family. You know, they weren't unkind just because they were unkind. They were struggling with their own mental health and addictions. And it's helped me understand that instead of blame, their stories were just as difficult as mine. Okay, I don't have a relationship with mum and dad's, it's still tense, but they did their best and they were fighting their own battles.
I think also that going back to the community spirit thing that we do as well, forgiveness plays a massive part in that and tolerance. I remember when I went to university, I think I was all right. I think I was an all right guy. And I'm daft. I mean, I'm daft, but some of my jokes probably had a victim. Some of my jokes, my sarcasm were probably a bit mean to somebody. And and I remember starting university thinking, I don't want to do that anymore. It makes me feel not very nice, and I don't want to be not very nice. I met somebody who I thought I almost wrote them off as a nerd, and I'm the biggest nerd around now. You have to look at the pictures behind me to say I'm a nerd, but
Me too.
yeah, the fact that I could have written somebody off at all just because of how they presented to me. Who the hell do I think I am for doing that? And again, that person now is one of the closest people in my life. So the thought that I could have lost out on that person because I'd written them off on my self judgment, and who am I to judge anybody?
I think that's what I've learned from being part of mental health mates. I mean, we have such a varied group of people, and they've all got wonderful characters. They're all different, but would we have met in another walk of life? Probably not. But in the last 6 years, I've met some truly amazing people. I mean, you'll see on my Instagram a lot. I'm friends with a young lady called Bethany who's had a really difficult life herself. She came along to my group because she was struggling, and she's become just one of the most wonderful people, one of my closest friends. And because she was inspired by my group, she set up her own group for people who can't walk. So once a month on a Thursday night, she has a craft and coffee group called Light in the Darkness, which is at the Beverly Braves Rugby Club. And that's all because she came to a community group. So that ripple effect is what we need. We need other people to come and think, actually, what else does our community need?
Paying it forward doesn't have to be a meal in a restaurant. It can, or in a cafe. If I'm kind to somebody and they say thank you ever so much, I would say, well, look, don't thank me. Take that kindness and be kind to somebody else.
100%.
Yeah, that's just the best, isn't it? Um, so another thing that you and I've got in common is ADHD,
Yeah.
and both getting a diagnosis for ADHD at a relatively sort of late age. I was in my mid 30s. I think you were about 40. And do you think that's done anything for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I was worried, Matt, because I thought I was going crazy. This is how my journey with the ADHD diagnosis started. So, my mum was one of five siblings, and all of them struggled when they got to the menopause. They were all diagnosed with some form of mental health disorder. One of my aunties did sadly take her own life, and my mum was in hospital when she was struggling with the menopause along with her mental health. And these last few years, I've started to struggle and I'm starting to worry, thinking, is this going to happen to me? I've got a young girl. I don't want to fall apart. And I could just feel I just was unable to cope. I was thinking everything was falling apart. I'm usually really organized. I was forgetful. I was sad. My mood was up and down. And it was only through somebody saying to me, "Have you read Davina McCall's book about menopause?" And I was like, "No, I haven't." And that sent me down a rabbit warren of reading about menopause, mental health in women who were 40 to 50, ADHD. I started reading about it and I'm thinking, oh my word, this is me. This is how I've always been. These characteristics are not just from now, they're right back to my childhood. All the impulsive behavior, all my acting with no fear of consequences. Never stop. Yeah, I think my ADHD diagnosis test was the best exam score I've ever got in my own entire life, Mark. I was like, I smashed it. But yeah, and it's been, I don't take medication. That's not what I did this for. I did it to understand myself, look at what I can do to help myself going forward. Obviously, there's exercise, what foods are triggering, that kind of thing. So yeah, it has helped me a lot because I feel like all of those things weren't my fault.
Mm. I got that from mine, and see, for me, it hasn't changed me a great deal. I thought I was dyslexic, so I went for a dyslexia test, and they went, "No, you're not dyslexic, but you've got raging ADHD." So, um, and for some time, I never really thought about it because actually, I wasn't surprised. I think I knew anyway. And as a child, I was always referred to as hyperactive. I don't know if you had that in the 80s as well, but
You only need to look at my social media, don't you? And it
mm,
all makes sense. This, like last year, I get hyper focused on things. So yeah, last year I decided I wanted to be a football coach. Applied for a fully funded course with the FA, qualified. Next thing, it is how I've
it,
always been.
I think the bonus I had because I kind of knew about it, there are some elements of it that I've been able to train. I mean, the number of hobbies I've had, you know,
The
phot
same.
photography,
Yeah,
blacksmithing,
yeah.
woodwork, painting miniatures, board games, this kind of thing. And then, I've written a book, and my wife always says, "Well, you'll do it for like 6 months, you get really good at it, and then you get right."
Bored.
But what
Yeah.
I've tried to do, rather than having 25 hobbies, what I've tried to do is go to my 12 hobbies and I now cycle them.
I might try that.
Yeah, and it's a really nice thing because you're not learning a new thing, you're honing something that you're familiar with. To some extent, that's because of money. I've never had a lot of money, and every new hobby costs money. It allows me to be familiar with the thing and come back to it. So I try and do that. The thing that it allowed me, when I was growing up, I have quite a big, relatively close family growing up, and like aunties and uncles and cousins, and we all used to come together at family parties on a semi-regular basis. And I'll say without fail, but if not without fail, but regularly, I would destroy the family party because there were certain foods I couldn't have. It was the food coloring, the E numbers.
Oh,
So if I had set like ice pops, certain cheap sweets or Kiora or all those things, they used to just make me go bazoing, and that's what used to happen at parties. All these things came out, and I'd end up falling out or fighting with somebody or and storming home. I lived in Anlaby and I'd be in a party in Cottingham, which for those who don't know, it'd be like it's like 8 miles away, and I'd just storm out as a 7-year-old kid and walk home. And someone would drive along saying, "Come on, get in the car." I'd be like, "No."
I didn't do that when I was at home because I wouldn't have dared. But I would do that. So in my driving lessons, I would just get out and walk off. I would just, it's all too much, and I would just get out, shut the door, and off I went. And it took me ages to learn to drive just because I couldn't cope with it all. What I do is I watch a film or read a book, and then that's my new hobby. So whatever I'm influenced by, anything, I think, oh yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to do that. Just read a book by somebody called, is it called The Hardest Geezer? It reminds me a bit of you actually, with his big beard. And he just said to his friends, right, I'm off, I'm going to run across Africa. So then I come down, I go, Mark.
Oh, but when you love to do something and the thing is, what I have learned through my ADHD, and this is what I don't know if you've ever heard Paris Hilton talking about it, but she talks about it as a
Brilliant.
superpower.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
For me, what it has done, it opens loads of doors. Because you and people say, "Oh, you do all sorts of things." I mean, it's just because I do them, and other people think, "Oh, that sounds good," and then they just carry on with the day. Whereas you and I think that sounds good. I'm gonna have a go.
yeah, absolutely. That's like last year when about somebody had messaged me and said, I've got a place for the Great North Run for Andy's Man's Club, but I can't run. Would you like to do it? So I was like, yeah, yeah, never run half a marathon in my life, Mark. Didn't train, rocked up on the day, smashed out a half marathon in 2 hours, 20 minutes. Just
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
so this year I'm climbing the three peaks for Andy's Man's Club.
Are you doing it in 24 hours?
12 is the Yorkshire Three Peaks. We're doing them
Oh,
in 12 hours.
oh well, I'm not going to tell you about the UK Three Peaks thing because that'll be your next one. You were talking about the menopause earlier, and something that I'm very passionate about is that we men become far more tolerant about it. I think I think we have a responsibility as us blokes. I'm a I always say I'm 6 foot, but I'm actually 5'11". But I'm a 6 foot bloke who's 20 stone, who mid 40s. I love my wife to pieces, and I've loved her for 25 years, and that doesn't change just because someone's going through difficulties that they're absolutely out of their control, whether that be hormonal or physical or whatever. And I just think it's so easy, and it has been so easy for men to just laugh these things off, and oh, she's going through the change. I do think we have a responsibility, not just men, everybody, but particularly men, because i think I think there's a lot of women who don't understand the menopause because
Yeah.
it's been made a dirty word. But I think we men and family members and everybody out there has a responsibility to just be a bit more tolerant, a bit more caring, look into how you can help somebody. There's all sorts of things out there that can make the journey through that easier. But if somebody read off the list of things to me that can come about as a result of the menopause, and said to me, you might suffer with these problems for between, you know, 2 and 7 years on average. I think, I mean, in the extreme cases, it's a lot more than that, but I won't want one of them, never mind the whole list of them. So we need to be a bit more tolerant.
Yeah, it's hard, Mark. And what I will say, I think I went to doctors, but like you mentioned earlier, I didn't have my hormones came back fine, level, nothing. There was no significant signs of the menopause, but all the I was feeling all the symptoms. And it was only when I went back about twice, more injections. No, it's not that. But then I read Davina's book. I did a lot more research myself, and actually, that you don't need to have the imbalance in your blood tests to be suffering with perimenopausal symptoms.
No,
And I went back in floods of tears to the nurse and I said, just please help me, please help me. And she put me on to the most wonderful doctor who has been an absolute godsend. But it's only because I went in armed with, I educated myself on what these symptoms were, how I felt, and I kept a mood diary. And it was only because I did that that I got that support. I think a lot of doctors still are kind of not really on board with giving you the medication or support you need at early stages.
I agree. And I went to a talk last year by a lady called Dr. Louise Newson, who's one of the leading British menopause doctors or experts. And she has an app, which is one of the few apps created to try and help women track elements of the menopause in like a diary form. But it also, I think, because everybody's journey is slightly different, I think what it also does is it looks at what's happening, and it makes suggestions. I think it does this. It makes suggestions on the individual as to what they might do to go about managing it in a way that helps them. One of the reasons it doesn't matter when you what your blood levels are is because the whole thing was created by men. You know,
Yeah.
menopause was invented by men, and the perimenopause was invented by men. And it's so inaccurate, and it's so poorly scientific that it's just open to abuse by men. Yet again, us middle class white men have a lot to answer for, and therefore we should be a bit more tolerant about what's going on in
I
people's
think
lives.
what makes me sad, Mark, is like I look back at my family history and my mum and her sisters and my even my nana before her, and I think where would their lives have led them had ADHD and menopause got the recognition and support it does now? Because
Yeah,
I wonder whether it was depression and anxiety, or all along they were also neurodiverse and then faced with the menopause, which was you didn't talk about in
no,
in the 70s and 80s. And I think to myself now, knowing what I went through, I feel a lot more empathy for them, and because they had no voice. I hope people like me, your wife, we're leading the way, and we're in that age group of people who are going to change the way these things are perceived and dealt with for the younger generations.
I hope desperately that, I mean, I think the younger generation coming through are far more tolerant of lots of things than we ever were. people like you and me, who I hope are good people, have looked at prejudice and thought, hang on a minute, there's a problem with it. It's nonsense. But, and that goes for everything, whether that's ailments or people's behavior or whatever. But I just think it comes back to what you've said a number of times. We just need to be a bit kinder to each other, but kinder often means listening to someone's problem, not just assuming that you know the answer. It's listening right to the end, and that's one of the biggest things I've learned is to listen until people have finished talking, because
Yeah.
there's those little snippets at the end, and that's my ADHD wants to jump in and give a response. But those little things at the end might be the difference between you understanding it properly and not understanding it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Oh, the other thing I want to talk to you about, because we did touch on it, is your Christmas hampers. Another ADHD
No,
journey.
this is something I started 20 years ago. I think it's just asking people in the community if they will put a shoebox together for the elderly or the families who don't have very much for Christmas. And I think in the first year, we got about 10 hampers. And then I'm like, the next Christmas came and I thought, can you imagine if that old man who got a hamper last year is still alive and he doesn't get one this year? I'll feel really bad and he'll feel really lonely. Right, we're going to do it again. So then it went to like 30 hampers, 40 hampers. Now, 20 years later, we're getting about 300 hampers every Christmas. But my house at Christmas, you can't move. So when Mark and Poppy come in from school and work, they're clambering over tins of tuna, beef paste, dog food, cat food. They're like, Poppy can wrap a shoebox in her sleep.
Poor Poppy, when she was little, probably thought, "Oh, look at all these Christmas presents for me."
Now she's just like, Mom, because she can't get to the fridge. But yeah, and that is something, again, it doesn't take much at all to put a few little items in a box. They are given to the most vulnerable families in our community. They are sent to the elderly, and they might be the only thing somebody gets that Christmas. And if
Mm,
that gives them that little bit of hope, I mean, it's sad that in this day and age there is children without presents at Christmas because mums and dads are having to choose between food, heating, and presents.
yeah,
So
yeah.
if we can do anything to help, I always will. And what I will say is I have the most supportive colleagues and friends. People just walk up at my door, Mark shouts, Claire, there's somebody else with a massive tray of food.
So just for reference, so if anybody ever wanted to get involved in that, and I would imagine there's lots of local people doing it
Campaign.
across the country
Yeah.
as well. But the other thing to make clear, I think, to people is that you don't have to do a full shoebox with all the different things in.
No,
You can contact the wherever it is locally that's doing them and ask them what they're short of, and go and buy, like you say,
absolutely.
10
Yeah.
tins of tuna or some toothbrushes or
We have families who do a hamper between them, so they all buy one thing, or we have people who work together doing one shoebox and they all buy one thing. Or I just take, if somebody turns up here with 2 tins of tuna, what I do is I put them all into piles and then I will make hampers from the small donations.
magic. Well, I think we've covered most things there, Claire, and you have been an amazing guest, as I knew you would be. I think I know I've said it a lot of times, but you inspire me such a great deal, and I'm so. You say that you're not comfortable doing this sort of thing, but you do it so well. Um, the last question I want to ask you, well, there's two actually.
Ah,
One one is, if you could go back and give advice to your 17-year-old self, what would you say?
be kinder to yourself. I've spent so many years hating on myself, hating what I look like, questioning whether people like me, don't like me. Just be kind to yourself.
If on your gravestone, or if somebody wrote something about you when you weren't here anymore, what would you like it to say?
I have a favourite quote. Can I tell you what my favourite quote is? Let me tell you my quote. I don't want to say it wrong. It's what drives me every day. It says, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel, by Maya Angelou.
Love it.
And that inspires me every day. I think they'll forget about money, they'll forget about anything, in life. But if you make somebody feel good about themselves, or you're kind and you change someone's day just by smiling at them, that's what I live to do. Make people feel better.
Claire, you're a superhuman. So come on, fire off some websites and things that we need to, if anybody wants to get in touch with anything to do with you, with the mental health mates and things, give us some websites.
Yeah, so we're on Facebook under Mental Health Mates Beverley. Instagram is MHM_Beverley. And then just nationally, Mental Health Mates website, it's just www.mentalhealthmates.co.uk. Put your postcode in and see if there's a walk near you. If, like I say, and if there isn't, and it's something that you're interested in or you'd like to do similar to what I've done, just give them a shout. Bryony and Jess, obviously Bryony Gordon and Jess are wonderful people, very supportive. So yeah, it's the best thing I did.
Thanks ever so much, Claire. I hope you've felt comfortable. I hope you've enjoyed our chat.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I've thoroughly enjoyed having you on Chewing the Crust with Piety Man.
Like you said earlier, if this helps one person or one person attends a mental health mates walk or one person listens and thinks, you know what, I'm going to knock on my elderly next door neighbour and just check they're okay, then this is worth it, isn't it?
These things don't have to hold us back, do they?
No, no.
And the irony that you were fearful of being a mum and being not a good example. So you are a shining example to her.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mark. I'll see you soon.
All right, speak to you soon. So that was Clare Greaves, everybody. What an inspiration. You don't have to watch much of that podcast to see what a superb human Clare is. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please click like. Even better if you could subscribe. But again, share the message with your friends. If you think anybody would benefit from this, please share it. We've all got a story to tell and we've all had our difficulties, and that's what we're here to try and share.